I'm Bonnie Fogel. I'm the founder of Imagination Stage, and I was the executive director for 43 years. We started Imagination Stage in 1979. At that time, it was called the Bethesda Academy of Performing Arts, or BAPA for short. My role with the organization really changed dramatically, you might say, over time. When we started, we really were a grassroots organization, just a couple of mums that wanted to do something for the children in the neighborhood. We wanted to give them access to theater and theater arts education. That was our mission. So we had a very strong drive to do this, but we had absolutely, I would say, minimal skills. My partner was an excellent teacher and director, so she had that, and I tried to do the administration. But we really didn't have any governance skills, political skills, fundraising skills. These are all things that over the decades we learned. So the organization evolved as our knowledge evolved and as our determination to keep the small, struggling, fledgling organization going evolved. We had to change so that the organization could survive, and that we did. Janet started working at BAPA in or around 1984. She was then a faculty member, and about 1992, Kate Breyer had started the Theater for Young Audiences at White Flint Mall as an experiment, and we called that Operation Imagination Stage. And Janet said that that was where she really wanted to get involved. That was her passion. So 1992, 1993, Janet went over to White Flint and in short order became the director of theater at White Flint. And that position, of course, evolved into being the artistic director. It was always immediately clear that Janet was a very gifted teacher. And I remember the first time I really saw something that she had directed, she had a group of young teens doing Jabberwocky. It's by Lewis Carroll. And you may know that that poem is made up of complete nonsense words. It's very hard to really understand what's going on. And I thought it was absolutely fascinating that Janet had chosen this piece, which wasn't very accessible, especially to young Americans. It's a very British piece, really. But she had chosen it because it was such a fabulous way to teach children the power of language and how you present it and how you dramatize it to get your point across, even if it's not obvious from the language. So that was the first thing I saw her do, really, that really affected me and struck me. And then, of course, when she started working with Kate at White Flint, and it was apparent that she had a mission for theater for young audiences that went way beyond what theater for young audiences was at that time. For the most part, theater for young audiences was what I would call gingham apron and fluffy bunny theater. So it was all very superficial and didn't have much depth to it. And Janet really had a mission to present what she would call slow food, not fast food. So theater that was entertaining, it was always fun, but it went beyond superficial, and it credited children with having empathy and understanding that went perhaps beyond what we would normally have realized. And that was her great contribution. And it became apparent that she just had this extraordinary vision for what she wanted to do for children's theater. I do think of Janet's leadership in two ways. And as an artist, as I've said, she was a great teacher. She was a great director. She was also a great playwright and writer in general. All those things were extraordinarily important for her leadership position as the head of an arts organization. But the thing that was really extraordinary about Janet, I think, is that she had both sides of her brain working. She was a thinker, she was curious, she had entrepreneurial skills, and all the things that we really needed to ensure that the organization survived and thrived. She offered those to me in a partnership that was very deep and very strong. So she shared my understanding that we needed big, hairy, audacious goals, as Jim Collins used to call them, to excite people about the work we were doing. She was also very, very good at thinking through challenges in the community and coming up with new ways of approaching problems, thinking outside the box, bringing in new ideas for new programming, all these things that were entrepreneurial, in fact. And so I could always rely on Janet. If I had an idea, she would be right there with me. She was not someone that would say no, or if she said no, she didn't say no immediately. She always was very curious about ideas and new populations to serve, new ways to get children involved and to keep them engaged. And so that was why we had a great collaboration. I have so many memories of working with Janet. One always sticks out, and I don't know why it does exactly, except that it really shows what we were up against when we first came into what we now call our forever home at Auburn Avenue. And one day there was this huge snowstorm, and Janet and I just came in with snow shovels from home, and we shoveled out the walkways and the sidewalks because, you got into trouble if your sidewalks weren't clear. And so I always sort of remember that because it's what you do when you're a leader. You're always the last person in the room. You're putting away the chairs. You're doing everything. You're there with your staff. You're part of the group. You're leading the group in every way, whether it's cerebral or artistic or entrepreneurial or even sweeping away the snow. We were doing everything that had to be done, and it really showed what it's like to be leading an organization. You've just got to be that person, and Janet was that person. My memory of when Janet led the organization through a tough time, well, we're talking about 3 decades, and believe me, there were a lot of tough times, and Janet was always there. We really were a partnership and helped get through all the tough times. But the one that is preeminent is the most recent one, of course, and that was during the pandemic. That was the most extraordinarily difficult time, and there were many days when I felt that we would go out of business. We were having to figure out online programming. We were very blessed that we had a digital media department to help us with this. This is what really made it possible for us to get an early start on doing digital media programming. And one of the things about Janet that was so impressive at that time was, first of all, every day, as I said, we had to figure out, what are we going to do this day? What are we hearing? And Janet said that you knew it was a pandemic day when you changed your operation 12 times before lunchtime. But the other thing that Janet was doing was she was saying it's an opportunity to do something. So the opportunity that she came up with was online theater. How do we do that? And she came up with some great examples of online theater with professional adults. And then, of course, we also figured out how to put our students online doing theater. It was most extraordinary time and extraordinary programming that came out of it. So that's my preeminent example of Janet not only dealing with the stress of managing through a crisis, but also using a crisis to find new ways of doing theater and teaching. There are so many examples of how Janet was a supreme leader. And another example, I always remember from the early days, we had started a series of theater programs. It was a theater tour that all spoke to biotechnology, the emerging field of biotechnology. These plays were in high demand. So one particular time we were doing the play for a group of bio professionals. We had a room full of potential investors and people who were very curious about our work. And we were ready to start the play, and one of the actors was missing. Touring is always incredibly difficult and challenging. There's so many things that can go wrong and do. But this was a particularly important show. And I was wondering, well, how on earth do we deal with this? You have all these investors, potential investors, people who can take this play to other places. It's a huge new area for us, very excited. And there's an actor missing, what are we going to do? And I was, I think, probably visibly palpitating and not doing so well with this situation. Janet, in the meantime, was perfectly calmly talking to the actors about how this was going to be dealt with and what was going to happen, and maybe she would read in, and et cetera, et cetera. Just completely calm and had everything under control. Well, the actor showed up in the nick of time. It went forward. But I always remember that because it's such an example of how Janet always was. And we'll call it grace under pressure. She may have been paddling like fury under the surface of the water, but on the top of the water where everybody could see, she was completely serene, calm, and confident. And that's one of the things I always admired so much about Janet. And she was never a diva, or, some artistic directors really can be very excitable and difficult to work with. And Janet was never that. She was always very straightforward, very calm, very thoughtful, and completely dependable in any kind of crisis, whether it was a pandemic or whether it was a missing actor or whether it was snow falling, whatever it was. So I just so absolutely grateful that I had Janet by my side through those decades. It was a wonderful relationship. She was always extraordinarily gifted and an extraordinary leader, and I was so blessed to have her by my side through 3 to 4 decades of Imagination Stage. When I think about Janet's legacy, I think there are 2 aspects. The first aspect of her legacy is all the people that she has helped become their best selves. Think of all the actors that she's directed, children she's taught, the playwrights especially, whose work she has encouraged and helped along. There are so many playwrights and writers whose work she has used, and by using them and by giving them visibility and credibility at Imagination Stage, they really have gone on from here to become very eminent in their field. And Janet really did have a way of finding artists perhaps that others had not found, playwrights and writers, and as I say, bringing them along. So I do think that that is her legacy. Another aspect of her legacy is the plays she has written herself, which were very formidable plays for young audiences. I believe her biggest legacy, however, is going to be that she helped change the canon of theater for young audiences, literature, the plays that are now available to the field. As I said, in the early days, plays were very superficial. They were entertaining, they were fun, but there was nothing classic about them. There was nothing deep that would stand the test of time. And Janet commissioned all these extraordinary plays that are now part of the repertoire of theater for young audiences across the country. And that is really very, very significant.